Your body is tired, but your mind, it's still awake, still running, still looping, still resisting. And then like a boat pulling away from the dock, you begin to drift. Drift back to the year 1325, right into the coldest hour of the long medieval night. You've just come home. The world outside has been loud, fast, and full of other people's needs. But here inside your space, everything is still, cool, intact, in order. The lights are soft, maybe a warm amber glow diffused through a linen shade. There's a faint scent in the air, cedarwood or maybe lavender from that diffuser you nearly forgot you had. You slip off your shoes, not onto stone or dirt, but onto clean wooden floors recently mopped, still holding the quiet sheen of effort. Everything here feels clean, intentional, peaceful. You sink into the couch, not luxurious, just right. A simple mid-century frame wrapped in slate-grey cotton linen, firm, enough to hold you soft enough to forgive the weight of your day. The silence around you is gentle. This room is yours, its air, its pillows, its quiet. Privacy is not a privilege here. It's a given. A reward handed to you by centuries of progress clawed slowly from a time when people slept beside goats and cousins under a sagging roof. And maybe, right now, just as your body begins to melt into the cushions, this is the perfect moment to time travel not outward but backward. Are you ready? Dim the lights a little more. Let the low hum of the fan become your portal. Because tonight we're slipping back into the year 1325 when the Middle Ages cast their long damp shadow across Europe. Where you've just woken up not in fresh sheets or a well-designed room but on a rotting pile of straw surrounded by chickens, coughs and the quiet authority of fleas. Remember that clean feeling from just a moment ago. Hold on to it. Because where we're going, that feeling is a myth. Let's begin. Your body calls. Not gently, not politely. It drums a warning straight through your lower spine, a reminder that biology doesn't wait for civilization. You stumble outside, or more precisely behind the wooden hovel that people in the 14th century somewhat optimistically called a house. There's no flush, no porcelain throne, no soft close lid. What greets you is a dull, splintered bucket tucked under a crooked tree seasoned by time, dampness and legacy. Inside, it's not just waste. It's the biological memoir of your entire household layered in time, texture and temperature. The surface is still, but the smell tells stories of meals gone wrong, of fevers past of turnips that should never have been trusted. You crouch if there's room. Cold wind creeps through your sleeves. Your knees ache, and every creak, every drip, every twitch becomes part of a strange little symphony composed entirely by your digestive system and gravity. When you're done and slightly traumatized comes the real dilemma cleaning up. No toilet paper, no hose, no wet wipes. Just some straw, maybe a strip of rag that used to wrap bread and a flat stone damp with dew, or perhaps something worse. You choose, you wipe, you don't look. Then the grand finale, disposal. You haul the bucket to the front of the house. There's no sanitation department, no bin schedule. You simply dump it into the gutter, the ditch, or whatever depression in the earth seems less occupied at the moment. No one complains, no one gags, because disgust in this time is a luxury. Only those with comfort can afford to be offended. And if you think the nobles had it better, not quite. In the cold stone castle's bathrooms were often holes cut straight through the wall, the waste dropping into ditches or moats below. Sometimes that's the same water used for washing. Sometimes that's the same hole enemies crawl through to break into the castle. Sanitation meets sabotage. In the Middle Ages, relieving yourself isn't a routine, it's a ritual. An outdoor performance with high stakes and low standards. It's cold, it's communal, it's chaotic, and if you slip, well, welcome to your intimate introduction to humanity's leftovers. You head back inside, still haven't brushed your teeth. And the cold you feel now, it's not from the weather, it's from what you just saw, and wish you hadn't. You survived the cold, you survived the bucket, you deserve a reward. Maybe something warm, something you can call breakfast. But this is 1325, and here, comfort isn't on the menu. What they call breakfast in medieval Europe doesn't greet you, it confronts you. There's no table, no chair. You crouch near the fire, or where fire used to be because the wood ran out last night and nobody's been warm since. In front of you sits a wooden bowl. Inside something thick brown and quietly steaming a slurry of root bits, husks and fatigue. It's called pottage, a kind of endless stew. Not a recipe, but a ritual. New ingredients are dumped in over old ones, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. You don't know when this pot began. No one does. What matters is that it hasn't stopped. Next to it you're handed bread. Not the kind you slice, the kind you negotiate with. It's hard. Coarse, made of rye or barley, and bulked out with whatever filler the village hasn't yet run out of sawdust-crushed bark acorn flour. It doesn't break apart in your hands, it defies you, your jaw is the only kitchen tool left. And what about drinks? There's no orange juice, no lattes, no milk. You drink beer. At sunrise. Not because it's a vibe, but because it's safer than the water, which is often just a clear invitation to dysentery. The ale is weak, barely alcoholic, brewed more for survival than celebration. Even the children drink it. No one smiles about it, but it's less fatal than the stream. Meat that's for feast days and funerals, and only if someone important dies. Cheese mouldy if you're lucky, fruit rare, and usually half fermented. Spices don't even dream. A pinch of pepper could bankrupt a household. Salt is expensive enough to be locked in a chest. So you chew, you swallow, you don't ask questions, you try not to think about what might have crawled across the pot last night. Because breakfast doesn't give you strength here. It doesn't welcome the day. It doesn't lift your spirit. It just happens to you, like rain or plague. And when the bowl is empty and your hunger still stares back at you, you stand up not because you're full, but because you have no choice. If you don't work, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, well, the stew always needs more ingredients. You've swallowed your grey gritty excuse for breakfast, and now it's time to get dressed. Not that it'll help. Your wardrobe's singular. You own exactly one outfit. A tunic of scratchy wool or coarse linen stained stiff, and as familiar to your skin as regret. You've worn it every day, for months, maybe since that one solar eclipse no one talks about anymore. There's no seasonal look. There's no warm winter layers or breezy summer fabrics. There's just one rule. Wear it until it falls apart or infects you. Underwear optional. If the gods favour you, you might have a linen shift underneath. If not, you're going commando under wet wool stitched by someone who thought seams were more of a philosophical idea than a technique. There's no soap, no detergent, no laundromat. Just body odour, old smoke, and the slow alchemy of sweat turned into scent. You want to wash it. You'll need a river. Or firewood you don't have. Boil water, scrub with ashes or lye, and pray the sun comes out one of the 3 days a year it bothers to show up. Shoes. If you own any, they're little more than sad flaps of dying leather stitched together with hope and damp string. They offer as much support as a bad uncle. Most people just go barefoot. Through mud. Through dung. Across sharp stones and puddles full of bacteria that hasn't been discovered because the people who met it didn't live to name it. All of this leads to one conclusion. Your skin hates you. You itch constantly. Fleas, lice and bedbugs have taken up residence, rent-free, with zero plans to leave. Nobles, priests, children, everyone, walking zoos in human form. You'll scratch your armpit with a wooden spoon while talking to the village priest. No one bats an eye, they're scratching too. Your skin is raw. Your scalp, a battlefield. And when a rash appears, which it will, there's no diagnosis. No soothing cream. Just quiet suffering and whispered prayers to saints with suspicious skin conditions. If you're lucky, it won't get infected. Just be there, for months. Like a medieval sidekick, itchy, ugly and stubborn as hell. And now, you understand. You understand why that tiny splash of water on your bathroom floor makes your skin crawl. Why stepping barefoot onto a clean hardwood floor feels like stepping into a cathedral. Why the scent of fresh laundry can almost make you cry. It's not just you being picky, it's not perfectionism, it's inheritance. You are the result of centuries of humans losing wars against filth. You're descended from people who scratched their scalps until they bled, who wore their own sweat, until it turned solid, who lived in clothes that itched and called it normal. You don't hate dirt, you've just evolved to run from it faster. But here's the thing, you're not done yet. What you've seen so far, the pottage, the parasites, the perpetual discomfort, was just the indoor version of the nightmare. Now you have to step outside, into the world where your body becomes currency, where your time belongs to someone who owns the land and where your hands don't wear gloves but consequences. You thought breakfast was harsh. You thought your skin was the enemy. Wait until you start digging holes with a bent spine and borrowed hope. Are you ready? Step outside. The sun is up not to warm you but to count every drop of sweat you owe for the right to stay alive. You step outside if that half-collapsing shack of straw mould and warm manure could ever be called home. No one greets you. There's no have a good day. Just the soil, the wind, and the silent, towering indifference of nature itself looking at you like it's wondering, what time will you fall back into me today? You don't head out to go to work. You head out to offer up your body to a system that demands it without gratitude or guilt. Work isn't a means to grow. It isn't where you find yourself. It isn't a path to become your best version. Work is the machine, and you are just soft matter caught between its gears. You dig. With your hands, with a splintered hoe, with a spine that's been curving like a question mark since you were 10. You reap grain that you won't taste. You carry water for a house that isn't yours. You sweat not to live, but to avoid becoming irrelevant. Because here you're not a name, you're not even a life. You're a position waiting to be filled again. No one cares if your palms bleed. No one checks if your knees still bend properly. If you collapse, you're not a tragedy. You're a vacancy. The woman beside you, she works twice as fast. Not because she's stronger, but because after this field she goes home to another full shift. Washing, cooking, feeding, mending, collecting lice off her child, while pretending not to notice that her husband's infestation has already crossed to her side of the bed. Children, there is no childhood, only labour scaled to size. At 4 they fetch eggs. At 5 they sweep dung. At 6 they herd pigs and hope to not die of fever by the next frost. No one teaches them to dream, only to survive without asking why. And if you're not a farmer, don't celebrate yet. You're a blacksmith. Welcome to the forge where your lungs cook quietly with every hammer strike. A cooper. Your hands stay soaked, swollen, splintered. A tanner, you live among skins, guts, blood, and the permanent stench of something that was alive too recently. Wages. Not really. You don't work to earn. You work to not disappear. Break a bone, bite something and keep going, catch a fever, sip warm ale, mumble a prayer and hope death is busy elsewhere today. Rest only if you pass out. Sleep only if your pain loses the argument. Because here no one asks if you're tired. No one wonders if you're okay. There's no emotional support, no union, no sense that you deserve relief. Here exhaustion isn't suffering, it's just life. If you stop working, you stop eating. If you stop eating, you stop existing. And when you're gone, no one carves a stone. They just ask, "Where's the other hoe? Are you proud of your nose?" You probably are. It's tall, clean-lined, it sharpens your face. You've been told it gives you a Roman profile, elegant, striking, maybe even divine. But here's the truth. Your nose wasn't made to look good. It was made to keep you alive. The high, narrow bridge you see in the mirror each morning, that's a miniature furnace designed by centuries of evolution, built to warm the freezing air before it hits your lungs. Your nose is not aesthetic, it's survival architecture. And you'd know that deeply, intimately, viscerally if you stepped into this house after a full day of bending over frozen fields, with vertebrae crackling like old wood splitting in the frost. You walk back home, except home is generous. What you step into is a box of cold air and familiar suffering. The sun has gone, the sky leaks snow like it's exhaling ash. It's negative something degrees, but you've stopped keeping count. The thatched roof above you wheezes with each gust of wind. A single drop of melted frost hits your shoulder. It's unclear if it came from the roof or from your own breath circling back. Your house has no insulation, no sealed walls, no threshold against the cold. The floor is packed dirt colder than the outside because it never gets to thaw. Your blanket smells like wet livestock. The walls creak when you sit, and your only defense is a layer of damp wool and the body heat of the people you sleep beside, plus a goat and maybe a cousin, depending on whose turn it is to collapse. The air inside the house has its own texture. It smells of ash, of grease, of mildew, of sweat that dried on someone else and returned to the room like memory. It is a scent that doesn't leave you because it's not on you, it is you. The scent of your own permanence in a place that wants you gone. And yet, you don't flinch, you don't complain. Because somehow in a life where everything can kill you, this smell, this space, this bone-deep cold is the one thing that has stayed the same. You inhale, and suddenly you understand your ancestors better, not through legend, but through your sinuses. You sit. You fold into yourself. Your breath ghosts the air like a warning or a prayer. No one calls your name. No one asks how your day was. And yet this house, this half-frozen box of fleas and familiarity welcomes you back. Not warmly, but honestly. Because here in medieval Europe, home isn't where the heart is. It's where the cold stops stabbing and starts hugging. Now it's time to lie down, if you can call it that. What greets your spine is not a mattress, not a bed, but a mat of straw thinned from years of pressure, flattened like apology, already moulded to the shape of bodies that lay on it before you, some of whom may no longer be alive. There is no pillow, no linen, no your side of the bed. There is just space barely between you, your brother, your cousin, and a goat that's breathing, like it's also just finished a shift in the fields. This is your sleeping arrangement. No one sleeps alone, not because they don't want to, but because they can't afford to. Body heat is currency and livestock are more than food. They are radiators with hooves. The fire crackles weakly in the corner, but you don't trust it. Because wood is expensive and going into the Lord's forest for more could get your hand chopped off, or your body displayed in pieces, a lesson for others who thought they could just collect twigs. So the fire is kept small, scared, starving. It must survive the night. And so must you. This is why your family takes turns, shifts, rotations, vigil. Not religious, but existential. Each of you wakes for an hour to feed the flame, to nudge the coals, to keep the darkness from entering your chests through your breath. Because if the fire dies, someone in the room might not wake up. You close your eyes. You're surrounded by noise, but none of it speaks. There's a child coughing, someone older wheezing, the rhythmic crunch of a goat chewing something it shouldn't. There is no silence in this house, only the layered music of living things trying not to die. The air is thick with smoke dampness fatigue and a smell that no longer offends because you've run out of space in your brain for disgust. You lie still. Your knees ache. Your toes feel hollow. There is a pulsing in your shoulder that's been there for weeks. You don't remember what caused it, only that it hums louder at night. You don't dream. Your brain is too tired to weave fiction. You don't fall asleep, you fade. You drift into a quiet where the only measure of time is how long the next person takes to notice the fire's gone low. If winter left you numb inside a damp wool husk, summer strips you not with knives but with hours, with sweat, with stillness so thick you can feel it breeding. You thought cold was cruel. Wait until you meet heat with no escape, no privacy, no ventilation, no mercy. Your home, a box of wood thatch and prayers, turns into a brick kiln by midday. The air grows heavy and stops moving. Every breath feels like drinking from a puddle that's been stepped in. You don't open a window. There is no glass, just fabric nailed over holes fluttering weakly like it's about to faint. You want to take your clothes off. You can't. Not because of the sun, but because exposing skin is scandalous. Even if your back is breaking out in boils, even if your thighs are bleeding from sweat-soaked friction, your body must stay hidden. Because here skin isn't yours. It's the property of public opinion. And the flies, they arrive like tax collectors. They don't ask, they settle. On your neck, in your food. Around the rim of last night's stew bowl that never got rinsed. Inside the folds of your clothes drawn to places even you have stopped paying attention to. You try to sleep, but the air's too thick. Children cry. Old people mutter. The sick cough like the floorboards are cracking open. Dreams don't visit you. The heat takes up all the room. You wake soaked, and it isn't morning yet. You go to the fields, because heat is not an excuse. There's no such thing as too hot to work, only too lazy to live. There is no shade, no lunch break, no wide-brimmed hat unless you've tied straw to your head like a scarecrow in retreat. Your skin burns, your lips split, your eyes sting from the salt of your own body, your thighs rub until they scream, and no one cares because everyone else is chafing too. And here's what you won't admit even to yourself. You fear summer more than winter. Winter punishes, but summer undoes you. It seeps into your bones. It makes you irritable, sleepless, quick to snap, and then ashamed for snapping. It turns your body against your mind until you lose the energy to explain why you're not okay. Sound familiar? Maybe today you still find yourself agitated in rooms with no airflow. Maybe you feel your patience evaporate when the AC breaks. Maybe you can't stand the sound of other people breathing in a hot elevator. That's not just mood. That's memory. Inherited heat. A trauma your ancestors wore for centuries without a fan, without relief, without the right to complain. So the next time you touch the thermostat or sip iced water in an air-conditioned room, know this. Your body remembers what it took just to make it through one medieval summer without going mad. It's a summer night. Too hot for anyone to truly sleep. You're lying there, back sticky with sweat neck fused to the crackling mat of old straw, the house pressing in like a lung holding its breath. There's no silence. Only thick, clinging noise, the murmur of restless animals, the buzz of unseen flies, the shifting weight of people trying not to move. Your eyes are closed, but your body is not resting. The heat keeps your mind alert, stretched thin like cheese melting too slow. And then a sound. Small, soft, not the wind, not scratching, something quieter. You don't turn your head. You don't need to. You just listen. Over there, Uncle Godric and Aunt Mayeline, both in their 40s, sunburned, bent quiet folks, are moving toward each other under the same wool blanket they've shared since last winter. No words, no whispers, just the subtle rhythm of two bodies doing something they never had to be taught. This isn't sex from poems or paintings. This is biological ritual practiced in the dark among sweat beside livestock, with others sleeping just inches away. You're not disturbed, you're not shocked, because this is how it's always been. Everyone knows, no one says, just like you knew what was happening when your mother was pregnant with your younger sibling. Just like you know someday you'll need to learn how to make a child without waking the chickens. They don't kiss, they don't embrace, they just complete a moment not out of passion but out of duty tradition and a kind of silent agreement with the cold winters to come. You turn your face to the wall, not from shame, but because you understand. You are witnessing something ancient, something repeated, unspoken and essential. A mosquito skims your cheek. A baby whimpers in its sleep. You no longer feel annoyed. You just exist among the people who do what needs to be done without words in the heat, under a roof too low for modesty, but just high enough to keep another soul from disappearing. You're thirsty. Not a little parched. You're so dry your tongue feels like it's folding in on itself, like your throat is made of old leather and regret. You need water, and that's when water starts testing you. Because in this world, water isn't your friend. It doesn't soothe, it doesn't heal. Water is a dare. You spot the village well, a wooden bucket, stone rim chipped. The water looks clear enough, but beneath that surface, anyone's guess. The last person to draw from it was rinsing blood off their hands. There's a pig pen 2 steps away, a latrine behind it leaking God knows what into the soil. You wonder, why don't they just boil it? Smart idea, but to boil water you need firewood which is taxed or illegal, a working pot which is cracked, time which you don't have, and fire which you're saving for the baby's fever and tonight's pottage. You don't have those, but you do have thirst, so you drink. Because if you don't, you'll collapse. And collapsing in this century is just auditioning for a worse kind of death. You think, why not drink beer instead? You've tried. Beer helps if you have it. But beer takes barley equipment fermentation time, and someone who hasn't already finished the last batch before it even cooled. In most villages, beer is for feast days, childbirth, or the half-dead. The rest, well, you have water, or something pretending to be it. Here's the worst part. Water doesn't smell bad. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't announce its crimes. It's cool, refreshing, gentle, and it enters you like a prayer before becoming a death sentence. It carries worm eggs. It delivers typhoid, dysentery, and rot. It gives you a slow-burn apocalypse inside your gut until you're curled up on straw shivering and leaking everything you've ever been. You won't get a diagnosis, just a phrase. He drank something wrong, and if you die, no one will call it murder. Because water can't be guilty, right? You thought water was a reward, no. It's a test, a trap, a threshold. It doesn't hate you, but it certainly doesn't care. And you descendant of those who drank and lived, stand in your warm bathroom soap in one hand, motion-activated faucet in the other, rinsing invisible things off hands that were never really dirty. You're not thirsty, but you sip anyway. You're not filthy, but you wash again. Not because you're obsessive, but because something inside you still remembers the panic, the gamble, the 1,000 quiet deaths that came in a clear cup. So the next time you lift a glass of clean water to your lips, don't just drink it. Thank it, because you're living the dream your ancestors had to die to believe in. Ah, bathing. You probably smiled when it came up, drinking water dangerous. But bathing. At least that's safe, right? It's summer. You're itching like madness. Boils heat, rashes, bug bites. Your clothes feel like someone wrapped your skin in hot bread dough. And then salvation. A stream, glimmering under the sun, cool clean, calling to you like a hymn. You feel the urge rise. Take it off, all of it, jump in, feel. You reach for your collar, ready to shed this wet wool and a few centuries of shame. And then, Anselma. Someone from the village, a woman. A voice a blade cuts through the air behind you like a divine warning. Because you were about to undress in daylight, outside. In 1325, that's not refreshing, that's scandal, that's corruption, that's sin. Not just because you're showing skin, because you're opening your pores. See, people back then believed bathing made you sick, seriously. They thought water softened you, made you vulnerable, made disease seep in through the pores like poison on the wind. To wash was to weaken, to be dirty was to be protected. Your sweat, your smoke, your crust, that was armour. There were public baths once, shared tubs, conversation, a glimpse of humanity. But the church came and saw too much laughter, too much flesh, too much freedom. They shut it all down. Washing became something you did in silence, in secret, with guilt. And you think the era is gone? Not really. Have you ever hesitated to change clothes in front of someone? Ever felt weird about looking at your own body in the mirror fully clearly? Ever pulled your shirt down instinctively when no one even said anything? That's not insecurity. That's memory. You carry it. The shame, the vigilance, the quiet rule that your body must always be half hidden even from yourself. It was never about nudity. It was about control. Who's allowed to see you? Who's allowed to define what your skin means? And for centuries the answer was, not you. So yes, you can bathe now. You have hot water, tile floors, foam that smells like forests you've never been to. But even now, in the silence of a clean bathroom with the door locked and no one watching, a piece of you still hesitates, still adjusts, still apologizes. Not because you're embarrassed, but because your ancestors were punished for standing in light and they passed that shiver down to you cell by cell, spine by spine. You're sick, not a little tired, not something's off. No, your lungs rattle like a rusted gate, your stomach is waging civil war, you're sweating through your blanket and shivering under it at the same time. You need help, you need a doctor. Too bad it's 1325 and what you actually get is a man with a blade, a bowl and a prayer. They bring you to a room, wooden walls, stone floor, everything smells like blood-damp earth and quiet desperation. The man looks at you once, no questions, no tests, just a quick check of your pulse, your tongue, your eyes. Then he nods gravely. Too much blood. And just like that, he cuts you. No anesthetic, no sterilization, just a dull blade dragged across your arm until your life leaks out into a cracked ceramic bowl. Balancing your humours, they say. See, your body, according to medieval medicine, is full of 4 sacred fluids. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Get the mix wrong and you die. Too much blood, drain it. Too much sadness. That's black bile, time for a purge. Too much desire. Maybe you thought about someone's collarbone too long. Now your stomach hurts. That's on you. Let's say you broke your leg. You expect care. You get fire. Not for comfort, but because fire looks serious. The knife is heated, not cleaned. You're held down by neighbours. The bone is reset by hand, twisted back into place with the sound of raw celery snapping under boot. You scream. They say it means the demons are leaving. They wrap your leg with linen soaked in wine and blessed ash, which is just ash. If it festers, they'll cut it open again. Now let's say you have a stomach ache. Could be food poisoning, could be worms, but no, the healer says it's your thoughts. You've sinned, your gut is boiling with guilt. The cure. Confession. Bitter herbs. Starvation for 3 days. Maybe a nice beetle paste compress for balance. It gets worse. Time for leeches, not one, a bouquet. They're slapped onto your thighs, your temples, the soles of your feet. They suck and swell your blood, filling their bellies like little water balloons of failure. You cry, you vomit. They call for the priest, just in case God wants to finish what the doctor started. If you survive, it wasn't the medicine, it was God's mercy. The healer smiles. The leeches are praised. You lie there shaking with fewer red blood cells and a newfound fear of anyone holding a knife and a rosary. This was medicine. Not a path to healing, but a test of how long you could survive the cure. And if you lived, you were stronger. Not because the treatment worked, but because you crawled through hell and came back with your humours barely intact. Night falls. You've laboured, you've bled, you've chewed your way through something that might have been dinner, and now your body aches in every place it still has feeling. You want to lie down and disappear into the straw, but you don't, because now comes the bell. Not a bell you own, not one you can silence. The church bell, calling, marking, watching. You think the day is done, it isn't, not until you kneel. Because here in this century, in this soil-caked skin and lice-ridden tunic, God is not a belief. He's a schedule. He's the reason your feet turn toward the church. He's the silence in your house when someone forgets to bow. He's the heat that curls in your gut when you accidentally enjoy something for too long. Religion isn't part of your life. It is your life. It owns your calendar, your language, your right to marry, to bury, to be forgiven. It owns your soul and rents out your body to guilt. You don't believe because you understand. You believe because everyone else is already kneeling. And to remain standing is to invite stares that could become stones. You don't read the Bible. It's in Latin, the language of monks and noble sons who don't bleed under the sun. You listen, you nod, you accept. If the priest says your failed harvest was caused by your weak prayers, you kneel harder. If he says your child died because you wore an old amulet around your neck, you burn it. If he says joy is a temptation, you stop laughing. Your soul isn't yours. It's weighed, tracked, judged, audited. You don't earn heaven by living well. You hope for it by behaving correctly. And who defines correct? The priest. You fast. You confess. You chant songs whose words you don't understand. You fear hell not as myth, but as geography, a real place described in sermons so vivid you can smell the smoke. Rivers of fire, lakes of boiling blood, demons with hooks, and you dangling above the edge, not quite forgiven, but not quite damned. Yet. And you think that's just belief. No, that's survival, because the church doesn't need you to understand. It just needs you to comply. To fold your hands, lower your eyes, and repeat the lie until you forget it was ever a lie. That's how you live. Not because it's true, but because no one lives long enough to be sure it's not. You think being a medieval peasant is hard. Try doing it in a woman's body. Try doing it with a womb you never asked for in a world that treats it like public property. All the mud, the hunger, the blisters, the cold, and then add blood, add fear, add screaming in the night that no one calls a crisis because childbirth isn't an emergency. It's just Wednesday. As a girl, you don't grow up, you're prepared. Not for a career, not for a future, but for a transaction. By the time your hands learn to braid bread, someone's already chosen who'll take you. You may be 8 when they make the deal, 12 when you're married, 14 when you're pregnant. Love, that's not the point. You're not a bride. You're a signed agreement between 2 men who need more land and fewer mouths to feed. Your husband might be 30, might beat you, might ignore you entirely. Either way, you're his worker, his breeder, his shadow. If you speak, you're a scold. If you resist, you're a problem. And if you know herbs, or speak with certainty, or look someone in the eye on a rainy Tuesday, you're a witch. And witches burn. Now, childbirth, it's not sacred, it's not celebrated. It's a blood-soaked coin toss done in the corner of your hut, with rags that haven't been boiled, and hands that haven't been washed. If the baby's breech, or the cord's twisted, or your body tears the wrong way, you don't get a second chance. There's no surgery, no pain relief, no aftercare. Just silence or a priest or both. But if you survive, now you get to nurse a child through fever's lice hunger and winter, while washing clothes in frozen streams, while churning butter with blistered hands, while planting, reaping, cooking, mending, holding the home together with fingers already splitting. There's no day off. You are the day off for everyone else. Widowed, you're vulnerable. Unmarried, suspicious. Too bold, dangerous. A woman who steps outside the script risks everything. They'll call you unnatural. They'll call you cursed. They'll call you eventually to trial for nothing more than refusing to shrink. Even in the church, there's no true escape. Yes, you can hide in a convent. Yes, it's quieter there. But freedom? No. You must ask permission to speak, to move, to think even, and your soul, no matter how pious, is always placed below a man's. Because in this world, hierarchy doesn't end with kings. It descends through your skin. To be a woman in the Middle Ages is to carry the weight of everyone else's needs and still be told you're delicate. To suffer publicly but never loudly. To endure pain and call it obedience. To smile through the blood. To serve through the grief. To die and be praised for doing it quietly. Even in an age of universal suffering, a woman was still expected to suffer beautifully. You've made it this far. Through hunger disease, humiliation, exhaustion. You've bartered with pain, whispered prayers you barely believed. Watched the light bleed out of your neighbours' eyes as they fought to keep theirs open. But now you face something quieter. More immediate, more unavoidable. Violence. Not as anomaly, not as crisis, but as design. Here, law doesn't protect. It watches. It waits. And then it selects you without reason, without warning, like a god flipping a coin and forgetting why. Steal a loaf of bread, you may lose a hand, lie about it. They might push a spike through your tongue. Speak too freely, especially as a woman. You could be strapped into the scold's bridle, a metal cage for your mouth, cold iron across your face, a sharp plate pressing your tongue flat until it forgets how to move. It doesn't kill you. It just teaches you not to be heard. And if you're truly accused of theft, heresy, witchcraft, or merely being inconvenient, justice won't come in robes. It'll come in the form of ritualized pain. Trial by ordeal, they call it. You'll reach into boiling water to grab a stone. If your hand heals clean in 3 days, you're innocent. If not well, you were never meant to be. Or maybe they'll tie your wrists, drop you in a river. If you sink innocent and drowned, if you float guilty. Either way, the outcome is the same. You're not walking home dry. And if they decide you deserve death, it's public. Not hidden, not shamed, celebrated. People gather, bring children, snacks, cheer. They want to see the hanging. They want to hear the snap of the rope. They want to smell the smoke from the burning body. It's entertainment. It's instruction. It's the reminder everyone was waiting for. You might think the battlefield is where violence lives, but no. War is just violence made official. The real brutality lives in kitchens, in alleyways, in bedrooms, in pews. Fathers beating sons, husbands disciplining wives, nobles shoving peasants into mud just for making eye contact with the wrong horse. You walk, eyes low, hands tucked, breath shallow, because here any moment can become the one where you're chosen. Not for glory, not for punishment, just to be hurt, because someone needed to prove they could. Violence isn't the crack in the structure. It's the mortar that holds everything together. It's the price of existence paid daily silently in bruises no one names. And you, if you're smart, learn to move without echo. At this point you've survived the lice, the leeches, the mouldy bread, the bad dreams, and the very real possibility of being hanged for owning a squirrel. You've endured the weight of religion, the burden of birth, the ache of winter, and the silent howl of hunger. You've stitched your own wounds, buried people you loved without gravestones, and watched more sunrises than you believed you'd deserve. But now comes the final chapter of most medieval lives, and it doesn't wait for permission. If you're still breathing past 40, you're a miracle. You're the old one, not because you're wise, but because you're still here, and most of your generation isn't. The average life expectancy floats around 35, not because people dropped dead at 35, but because so many never made it to 5. Children died like crops in a late frost, quietly, suddenly, and too often to name. If you survived childhood, you limped into adulthood already weathered. You worked before your fingers stopped trembling. By 25, your back was bent and your teeth were gone. By 30, your joints moaned when you stood. By 35, you knew more funerals than festivals. Women died in childbirth alone in corners with prayer and boiling water, and someone crying too softly to help. Men died in fields, under carts, under blades, under debts they couldn't pay. You could die of plague, of famine, of a wound from last month that refused to close, of hallucinations from poisoned rye, of a knock on the door from someone who didn't like your tone. And when death came, it didn't dress up. No ceremony, no marble, no memory carved in stone. You were wrapped in what you wore, buried fast in a shallow hole because bodies breed disease, and grief slows down labour. You didn't retire, you just stopped showing up. But here's the part no one wrote songs about. You may have died, but your will to live didn't. It outlasted you. It kept moving through the dirt, through the children who made it, through the neighbours who whispered your name a week longer than expected. It survived war. It survived winter. It survived the silence after the priest walked away. Because somewhere beneath that churchyard, beneath the black soil and the bones with no names, there was a pulse, not of a person, but of a pattern, the instinct to endure. Not because the future was promised, not because things would get better, but because something ancient inside you refused to stop walking forward. And that instinct, the one that crawled through disease and hunger and darkness, didn't die with you. It crossed the centuries, through plague, through empire, through fire. And today it opened your eyes, gave you clean water, gave you light, gave you this story. You're not here by luck. You're here because someone who had nothing left still chose to survive. That wasn't hope, that was instinct. And it never stopped. The medieval dream dies, but the will to live, that made it out. So, how's your day been? And now? You're lying here, not in a wooden hut, not in the scent of boiled turnips or the weight of wool against your neck, not beneath a thatched roof leaking cold rain into your bones, but here, where the air hums, where soft light pools on your ceiling and the silence around you isn't fearful, it's yours. No one's watching, no one's judging, no one is coming to collect your tithe or demand your prayers. You made it back. The journey's over, but strangely, it didn't leave you. Because you still feel it that someone long ago lived and loved and laboured not because they believed things would get better, but because they didn't know how to stop. And thanks to them you get to fall asleep tonight without having to pray that you'll wake up. So breathe easy. Your eyes can close if they haven't already. There's nothing else you need to hold on to. They're gone now. They've done their part. Now it's yours.